Welcome to the Shreveport Connection with Tommy. And this report is going to be about Monday Night Raw and partial superstars for Thursday's edition on the internet superstars from the Raw brand. And some dark matches that were advertised, and they will be your main. There was 2 dark matches advertised from the Raw brand tapings. They haven't been posted, so that will be on my tomorrow night's show. But there was a dark match from prior, and Alex Riley losing the match to an underachiever wrestler. And I will give the results of that shortly. But first, as usual, some WWE news and some updates on WWE 12 video game and PlayStation Network. There are some updates that were supposedly being 2 days ago. Well, I'm just now getting mine today. So my PS3 is now getting its update. It's 225 megabytes. And it's installing right now as I'm doing the video. And also the DLC content for the Legends are available as of today. Dark match advertised for tonight's Raw show featured John Cena versus Kane and CM Punk versus Dolph Ziggler for the WWE Championship. Advertised SmackDown talent for tonight's Raw includes Big Show, Randy Orton, Mark Henry, Sheamus, Cody Rhodes, Wade Barrett, Ted DiBiase, and Daniel Bryan. Well, Ted DiBiase wasn't used on the show. Former WWE wrestler Bob Sparkplug or Hardcore Holly celebrated his 49th birthday on Sunday. That was yesterday. He was born January 29th, 1963. Former TNA wrestler Shark Boy, a.k.a. Dean Roll, celebrated his 37th birthday on Saturday. He was born January 28th, 1975. The following matches are listed for the 11 p.m. Central Time airing of the AWA on ESPN Classic. W.T. Jones versus Brad Rennigans. Mike Graham versus Colonel De Beers. John Pistolka versus Sergeant Slaughter. George Anderson versus DJ Peterson. Mike Graham and Steve Bird versus the Texas Hangman. Psycho versus Rock and Roll. Didn't say who else. And a Mystery versus John Nord. For those that didn't know that was the Berserker. Mike Enos versus the Russian Brute versus Nikita Koloff. Larry Zbyszko versus Curtis Hughes versus the Trooper. Killer versus Johnny Stewart versus Scott Norton. All those matches in 1 hour show. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just merely going what it's advertised, what is listed for tonight's show. Jordan R. and fellow reader Cliff Heckman attended the Sean Waltman and Billy Gunn after party in St. Louis, Missouri following the Royal Rumble last night and sent the following report. While attending the Rumble, While attending the Royal Rumble was a blast, despite the event itself being somewhat disappointing. Big Show at 30, number 30, and wanted to drop you a note about my experience at the post party I attended with Cliff and another friend, Neil. We all had a great time. We had the $10 general admission tickets. VIP tickets were available for $50. When X-Pac and Billy Gunn arrived, they sat in a private room with the VIPs for about an hour. Some attendees grew restless and left, thinking Pac and Billy weren't going to come visit with a general admission ticket holders. Sadly, those people missed out on a great time. Both guys came out and fielded questions, took pictures, and mingled. They were more than approachable and hung out well into the early hours of the morning. I think most people would agree that the event was a good time and would encourage X-Pac to host similar pay-per-view related parties in the future. Well, X-Pac, Sean Waltman got the idea from Kevin Nash because he was doing some parties before he made his re-debut in WWE. And some fans comment on the Rumble pay-per-view. .NET reader Adam Dunn, aka Air Force Rambus, attended the WWE Royal Rumble in St. Louis, Missouri on Sunday and sent the following report. I gotta say that after going to many events over the years, I've realized that wrestling fans really aren't a civilized bunch. They curse for no reason constantly and insanely cynical at live events, and kids scream for no reason constantly. Just constantly, no words, just screams. The cage match went off fine. Nothing too over the top for the crowd, but it did really feel like everything was a bit rushed. 9 minutes, really? John Cena got booed for so freaking loudly. I couldn't believe it. Usually St. Louis has a mostly pro-Cena crowd, but wow, even booed him when he was doing his 7,000th Make-A-Wish thing. I left for the Divas match. Upon my return, watched Beth Phoenix get her finisher, and I feel like I didn't miss much. The crowd continued to boo the hell out of Cena for the entire match with Kane. And the tombstone of Zack Ryder went over huge with the crowd. I know it was a lot of men, but wow, they acted like it was the happiest moment in history. They went crazier when Cena got chokeslammed. Brodus Clay and his entrance are the two worst things I've ever seen. My brother, who hasn't watched in quite a while, couldn't stop asking me what the hell was going on. I had nothing to give him, just a sad face. CM Punk got a gigantic pop from the crowd. He is the go-to guy for all of St. Louis. As for this match, the crowd ate it up, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. It was totally capped off with a GTS into the Famouser for Ziggler. Great fight. The Rumble had its moments. Mick Foley was over huge, of course, but nothing can top how awesome the Ricardo Rodriguez entrance was. Well, if you're not familiar with it, he came out in Del Rio attire and the Del Rio-like entrance with the car. Yes, it was a small sports car. It was by far the best part of the night. The Cobra versus Mr. Sacco during the Rumble with Mick Foley and Santino was also pretty hilarious. Booker T's entrance went over huge as well. Nobody cared that the Great Khali came back. I mean, no one. It was pretty quiet. Hacksaw Jim Duggan was the most over person of the night. I lost my mind cheering him, as did my brother. The return of Karma was surprising just because, well, what happened to her kid? Also, several referees checked on her after the elimination, as she may have tweaked her knee a bit, but she did walk to the back under her own power. For those that don't know, she was pregnant, and I don't think she was supposed to deliver so soon, because I think she was going to make her return after her delivery, which was expected for late February. Okay, back to the guy's report. My brother thought the return of Road Dogg was the greatest moment in history, but that's because my brother is still stuck in the 1998 Back to the Future movie regime when it comes to wrestling. I hoped and dreamed all night that Chris Jericho would do his entire entrance. Some wishes get granted. That was really cool. Sheamus winning didn't do too much for me. It was for most people at the show. Sure, they cheered, but really, it meant nothing. He's so unimportant now. Why give him the Rumble win? I guess it's because Jericho doesn't need the win to challenge for the title, as he made his presence known during Monday Night Raw tonight. But they came on. Overall, it was a fine show. Nothing too out of the ordinary. My brother kept begging for The Rock or Brock Lesnar just to come out or something. But he was kind of bored by everything. I mean, even mentioned during the Rumble match how none of the real big names in the WWE are even in the match, which is something most of the people on the site caught on to. Finally, they didn't do the national anthem at all. When did that start? Well, Nick Shields attended the Rumble and sent in his views of the Rumble and his experience. He says no one really cared about the dark match, which was Yoshitatsu defeating Heath Slater, as people were still getting to their seats and a bunch of promos were shown before they even went live. There was a mixed reaction for Daniel Bryan and a few cheers for Mark Henry. Big Show got a huge pop, and he was a giant dude. Most people were into the match at the beginning, but the same thing kept happening. Someone getting thrown into the cage side. People didn't think it would end so quickly, but with Henry limited, I thought it would happen. After the match, Henry had to be helped by an official as he was in a lot of pain just by the way he was walking. He stood behind the cameras when Bryan was celebrating and then immediately walked back. The only good thing about the Divas match was the entrance. I took a restroom break during this. I'm sure I didn't miss anything special. John Cena was booed heavily, and I was one of those booing him. Kane's entrance is awesome live. The usual back and forth, let's go Cena, and Cena sucks chants were going on, and people were well into the match. However, when they were fighting outside the ring, the bell ruled it a no contest. There were a surplus of boos. Backstage stuff was kind of dumb with Kane beating Cena with a chair multiple times. Kane getting Ryder from his room and wheeling him back to the ring got some cheers. When Kane had Ryder in the tombstone, people were actually cheering, and it was cool how it actually happened. It was loud when Cena took a choke slam. Brodus Clay's entrance was really cool. Other than that, the match was stupid, and the crowd liked his dancing. Dolph Ziggler had a few fans in the crowd, but not very many. There were CM Punk chants before he came out. The crowd went wild when Punk actually did come out, and the crowd was really into the match. The near falls were great. When Justin Roberts announced it was time for the Royal Rumble, it got more of a reaction than half the wrestlers ever did. Alex Riley got a good reaction for being absent so long, and so did R-Truth. Notable Rumble match entries from the fan being there. Mick Foley got a huge reaction along with Santino Marella. Everyone loves Santino. The crowd was definitely fooled when Alberto Del Rio's entrance music hit, and out came Ricardo instead. Jerry King Lawler and Booker T received big cheers when their music went off. Kofi Kingston walking a handstand during the Rumble to not get eliminated received a standing ovation, which was an awesome move because he wasn't leaning on the ring apron or anything. He walked on his hands to the ring steps and then walked himself back in the match. Hacksaw Jim Duggan probably got one of the best reactions, but boos were plenty when he was eliminated real quick. No one was expecting Karma, as it was a pleasant surprise. She also had one of the better reactions of the night. The spot where she hit her finisher was really cool as well. Yeah, she delivered the implant buster on Michael Cole. Sheamus got a lot of little kid reaction. I think Sheamus is a way better heel. Road Dogg also got a giant pop as a lot of the older fans cheered for him. It seems like Wade Barrett isn't getting over as much as he should be there, as where a lot of the boos was not so much as a top heel. Randy Orton got an awesome hometown reaction. It was obvious Chris Jericho was next because they were setting up the fireworks for his entrance. It was awesome live, and he got a monster reaction. Everyone thought Batista or Taker would be the surprise entrant number 30, given the fireworks were still up and all the big names already entered. The crowd was not very happy with Big Show being number 30. The end when Jericho and Sheamus had the near elimination spots were cool, and everyone was really into it. I wanted to see Jericho win, but Sheamus is passable. This was my third ever event, and obviously the best. As the first two were house shows, it was a good event, but it definitely could have been better. It was announced in October at Ringside Fest in New York City that Mattel would release a WWE action figure on Miss Elizabeth. In 2012, via MaddieCollector.com, according to a promotional advertisement in the February 2012 issue of WWE Magazine, the action figure will be released in November later this year. Well, former ECW, WWE, WWF, TNA wrestler Tommy Dreamer was suffering from back pains after his street fight with Kevin Steen at the Wrestle Reunion Convention's Pro Wrestling Superstar Show in Los Angeles this weekend, and he also suffered a broken nose. In related news, John Morrison was backstage at the same event at the PWS show and agreed to come to the ring to be introduced to the crowd, but Morrison changed his mind and didn't make the appearance, but he was still backstage. Mike Tyson, 2012 Hall of Fame induction, has received mainstream coverage from earlier today, including ESPN, TMZ, and many news outlets. As they announced on Raw tonight, he will be inducted to the celebrity wing of the Hall of Fame. As noted before, Tyson appeared at the Wrestle Reunion Convention in Los Angeles this weekend with Tommy Dreamer and other talent. Tyson is a big wrestling fan and was very excited to meet superstar Billy Graham and see people like Mick Foley. Tyson was set to do an angle where he would have knocked out a heel, but the deal was never worked out. And what everybody's been waiting for, the results from tonight's action. The dark match before tonight's Raw Super Show in Kansas City saw Hunico defeat Alex Riley. Camacho was in Hunico's corner as his bodyguard. Yada, yada, yada. Matches taped for tonight in Kansas City for this week's Superstars were Bella Twins versus Kelly Kelly and Alicia Fox as tag team action. R-Truth versus United States Champion Jack Swagger in a non-title match. And here's the results for the spoilers for February 2nd, 2012 edition of Raw Brand Superstars. Kelly Kelly and Alicia Fox defeated the Bella Twins. R-Truth beat Jack Swagger with Vicky in the non-title match. And now for Raw. Tonight's Raw Super Show opened up with Pyro as Michael Cole welcomed us to the road to WrestleMania. We're live from the Spring Center in Kansas City as Justin Roberts introduces John Laurinaitis out and he comes to the ring. Laurinaitis is greeting fans at ringside on his way down because this may be his last night in WWE. Well, we'll soon find out. You will find out. I already know. Because I don't have to call on anybody. Laurinaitis is all smiles as he entered the ring. He's looking forward to his review tonight. Laurinaitis says he's done a good job, but admits he has made mistakes. He's confident he will be named the permanent GM of Raw tonight. Then he brings up Triple H doing the job review tonight, and the crowd cheered. Laurinaitis wanted to talk about his performance at the Royal Rumble now. He says he called it right down the middle. Laurinaitis announces Raw Elimination Chamber. WWE Champion CM Punk will face Kofi Kingston, Dolph Ziggler, The Miz, R-Truth, and Chris Jericho. For tonight, Laurinaitis announced Miz versus Kofi, Ziggler versus Randy Orton, Eve Torres versus Beth Phoenix for the WWE Divas title, plus World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan versus WWE Champion CM Punk. Laurinaitis finishes up, but it's interrupted by CM Punk's music, Cult of Personality, as the WWE Champion makes his way out. And this is how they set up the match versus Ziggler. Punk came out and leads the crowd in singing Goodbye. Na 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 na, hey, goodbye. To John Laurinaitis, Punk enters the ring and rips Laurinaitis. He says he's not a fan of Triple H, but he can't wait until the game kicks Laurinaitis out the front door tonight. Laurinaitis wants to put his differences with Punk aside and start fresh. Laurinaitis extends his hand to Punk. Punk says the only way he would do that to take the hand is if Laurinaitis wanted to go to sleep. The music hits, and out comes World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan. Okay, well, it wasn't Ziggler, it was Daniel Bryan. My mistake, even though I saw it wrong. Well, that's what happened. First signs of getting old. Okay. Bryan says nobody cares about Punk and Laurinaitis' personal problems. While they were doing their soap opera last night, he was winning. Bryan says nobody appreciates his accomplishments last night. Laurinaitis says he understands. Regarding tonight's match, Bryan says Punk isn't much of a challenge after what he went through at the Rumble. Punk says he's right. All he is the best wrestler in the world. Bryan says he's more than a wrestler. He's a role model, a vegan. Bryan brags about not eating meat. Punk wonders what exactly does Bryan eat. Bryan says he will take Punk's pipe bomb and stick it where the sun don't shine. They come face to face. Punk says that we've known each other for a decade and are friends. How about giving Kansas City a show tonight? Punk says, let's give them the best wrestling match in the world. They're interrupted by Sheamus, and out comes the 2012 Royal Rumble winner. Sheamus talks about winning the Rumble. He pointed out Bryan and Punk both will defend their titles at an Elimination Chamber, and that Laurinaitis may be fired tonight. Sheamus points up at the WrestleMania sign and says he has earned the right to be in the main event. Sheamus says he will become the next WWE or World Heavyweight Champion. Getting in both Punk and Bryan's face, he wishes them good luck. He hopes Triple H kicks Laurinaitis in the ass so hard he throws up his laced undies. Sheamus drops the mic and headed to the back. Punk and Bryan face off and shake hands in the middle of the ring. Up next is Orton versus Dolph Ziggler, and they cut back to commercial. Randy Orton versus Dolph, I'll call him Dolph Ziggler. We get footage of Wade Barrett injuring Randy Orton on SmackDown a few weeks back. Josh Matthews is up in a private skybox with none other than Wade Barrett. And they're watching from the skybox as Randy Orton makes his way to the ring. Out next comes Dolph Ziggler with Vicky Guerrero. Okay, the bell rings and they go at it. They go back and forth until Dolph dodges a move and shows off some. Orton gets into a headlock and slams Ziggler to the mat. They get back up and Orton drops Ziggler with the shoulder. Matthews is talking to Barrett in the skybox again about Orton as the match goes on. Ziggler tried to turn it around, but Orton clotheslined him. Orton with an uppercut in the corner now. Orton charges, but runs into a punch from Ziggler. Ziggler drop kicks Orton to the mat as they cut to commercial. Back from the break. And Ziggler is working on getting the sleeper applied. He gets on Orton's back, but Orton rams him back into the corner. Orton runs into a boot in the corner and goes down. Ziggler with a 2 count. Ziggler charges in the corner for another 2 count. Ziggler continues and drops Orton with a neck breaker. Ziggler does his sit-ups in the ring and waits for Orton to get up. Ziggler goes up top, but Orton knocks him down on the turnbuckles. Vicky is screaming as Orton works Ziggler over on the turnbuckles and climbs up for a superplex. Orton was actually almost slipping off the rope, but still delivered the superplex. Orton covers Ziggler for a close 2 count. They trade shots on their feet now. Orton with a pair of clotheslines and the scoop or snap slam. Orton takes Ziggler for a 2 count. Ziggler comes back in with a big leg drop, but Orton kicked out at 2 as Barrett looked on from the skybox. Still, Ziggler jumps on Orton's back again. Orton throws him off and clotheslines him out to the floor. Well, when he threw him as he was on his back, it was like a forward roll type of move. Orton throws Ziggler into the fan barrier before bringing him back in the ring. Orton came up and nailed the second rope draping DDT. Orton connects with the RKO for the win. Still to come, your whatever main event. Punk versus Bryan and another WWE Hall of Fame announcement. Back to commercial. We see John Laurinaitis walking backstage. He greets William Regal and asks how his son is. Laurinaitis greets Kurt Hawkins next before we go back to commercial. Brodus Clay versus Tyler Rex was up next, and then this was a squash match. Back from the break, and out comes Brodus Clay with his dancers. They put on a show as Tyler Rex looks on from ringside. They lock up, and Brodus shows Rex back to the mat. To the mat. Brodus shakes and does it and hits Rex with right hands and an elbow. Brodus goes for a clothesline, but Rex kicks him and boots him into the ropes. Rex takes Clay to one knee and beats on him. Clay shakes it off and fights to his feet. Clay with a belly-to-belly suplex and a clothesline. And Clay delivers his finisher with the funk for the win. They go backstage with Daniel Bryan walking up into CM Punk's locker room. Punk says that they're both underdogs who made it to the top, but says a lot of people don't know what a vegan is. Bryan talks about being a vegan and not eating meat. He says a lot of people don't know what straight edge means either. Punk says, unlike Bryan, he doesn't claim to be a role model, but Punk picks up the WWE title and says he's just the best wrestler in the world. Bryan walks off as they go to commercial. Next up was your actual main event. In the middle of the show, CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan. Back from the break, out first comes the champion, Punk. Then champion Daniel Bryan was out next. The bell rang and they locked up. Punk took Bryan to one knee with a headlock. They ran the ropes and Punk dropped Bryan with the shoulder. Punk leapfrogs and Bryan drop kicks him. Bryan applies a surfboard type submission and jumps down on Punk's legs. Punk fights back and took Bryan to the mat. Punk with a big kick to the back for a 2 count. Punk works Bryan over until he turned it around. Bryan grounds Punk to the mat with knee drops as the crowd chanted for Punk. Bryan twists up Punk's arm and stomps on it before going back to a submission. Punk ends up dumping Bryan over the top and out to the floor. Punk goes to the apron and drops down onto Bryan. Punk with an uppercut on the floor. Bryan hit one also, and they trade uppercuts at ringside. Bryan whips Punk into the production area at ringside as the referee begins to count. Punk makes it back in, and Bryan starts kicking him. Bryan with a headlock now. Punk breaks out with a back drop and goes to the apron. Punk springboards in with a clothesline and covers Bryan for a 2. Punk continues the offense and chops Bryan into the corner. Bryan whipped Punk into the corner, but Punk countered a drop kick and hit him for another 2 count. More back and forth until we take another commercial break with both men down. Back from the break. Bryan has Punk on the mat. Bryan continues to work on Punk's arm. Bryan goes to the top and Punk stops him. Punk hits big chops while Bryan sits on the top turnbuckle. Punk climbs up and screams, "Best in the world," to Bryan before taking him to the mat with a hurricanrana. Punk fires away on Bryan and drop kicks him. Punk with a clothesline and a neck breaker. Punk hits a high knee in the corner and then the bulldog. Punk waits for the GTS, but Bryan countered and slid out to the floor. Punk hit the baseball slide and goes to dive through the ropes, but Bryan hit the forearm. Bryan climbed up top and hit a missile drop kick on Punk. 2 count for Bryan. Bryan with a series of kicks to the chest. Punk ducked a roundhouse kick and rolled him up for a 2. They go back and forth some more. Bryan hit a side kick to the head and covered for a 2 count. They end up on top again, and Punk knocks Bryan to the mat. Punk hits the big flying elbow, but Bryan kicks out again. Punk went for the GTS, but Bryan rolled him up for a 2. Bryan goes for the Lavelle lock, but Punk slides out. Punk catapults Bryan into the turnbuckle with a monkey flip and drops him with a big kick to the head. Chris Jericho runs out and throws Bryan into the fan barrier for the disqualification. Jericho then enters the ring and nails Punk with a code breaker as the referee calls for the bell, and Daniel Bryan wins because he's the first one that got hit. Bryan smiles from the floor as he's announced the winner, and he does a yes, 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 scream chant, like he just had sex. and just had his orgasm. Well, Jericho stands over Punk in the ring as Punk tried to recover. Bryan backed up the ramp yelling, yes, again, over and over again as they go to replays. Jericho stops and smirks back at Punk in the ring. Just like he's done many years previous. They announced boxing legend Mike Tyson for the 2012 Hall of Fame, and we get the video package from Iron Mike. R-Truth came to the ring in street clothes, and we take a commercial break as he's walking out. Well, he's only there to be the fourth guy at the announcer's table. Or, whatever, actually the third guy at the announcer's table. Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler and R-Truth. Okay, Kofi versus The Miz was up next. Back from commercial, and R-Truth has joined the announcers for the commentary. Kofi Kingston makes his way out first, followed by The Miz. Miz stops on stage and talks about Kofi's handstand. Was actually hilarious. He says, really does really crappy stuff. Miz brags about lasting over 45 minutes in the Rumble. That should be more impressive than his handstand that was trending worldwide on Twitter last night. He says that his road to WrestleMania is taking some detours, but he will win the Elimination Chamber and go to headline WrestleMania because he's The Miz and he's awesome. Bell rings and they lock up. They trade holds until Miz takes control. Miz with a big kick and a 2 count. He takes Kofi to the corner and beats him down until the referee tells him to back off. Miz hits a high knee and talks truth. Miz turns around and Kofi rolls him up for a close 2. Miz comes back with a big clothesline. Miz hits a clothesline in the corner and comes off the top for a 2 count. Miz takes Kofi back to the mat and he fights up and back to his feet. Kofi with another roll up for a 2. Miz countered and hit a big DDT for a 2 count. Miz runs into a kick in the corner, and Kofi goes up top. Kofi comes down with a big crossbody for a 2. Miz hits a back breaker on Kofi, but Kofi countered the neck breaker. More back and forth action. Kofi slid out of a skull crusher finale. Miz charges in the corner but misses. Kofi delivers Trouble in Paradise out of nowhere for the win. David Otunga and John Laurinaitis are backstage talking. Laurinaitis wonders if Otunga is out for his job. Otunga says he is content with his role and believes everything works out later on. Back to commercial. Up next is the Divas title match between Beth and Eve. Back to commercial. And the match is up next. Divas title match. Eve versus Beth. Out comes Eve Torres looking worried and paranoid. This was a squash match as the Divas champion Beth Phoenix is out next. Bell rings and Eve takes Beth to the corner but gets overpowered. Beth went right for the glam slam immediately and nailed it for the squash win. I believe that match lasted maybe exactly 1 minute. After the match, Kane appeared on the big screen to talk to Eve. Kane talked about Cena and says until he truly embraces the hate, he won't beat Kane and won't beat The Rock at WrestleMania. Kane says he will continue to inflict as much pain as he can on Zack Ryder until Cena embraces the hate. Kane says tonight he's going to use Eve to pass the message along. The stage explodes and Eve starts crying. Kane is behind her, standing on the apron now since the light came back on in the arena, and he backs her down in the ring, but out comes John Cena's music, as well as him. Kane and Cena brawl in the ring while Eve escaped. Cena took the fight to the floor, and they brawl around the ringside area. Cena throws Kane into the steel steps and continues the assault. He actually starts smiling. Cena then picks up the steps and hits him in the head with it. But actually, it was not the head, it was the shoulder. He never hit him in the head, not once. Cena says he will knock Kane down every time he tries to get up. Cena rams Kane with the steps again and again. Cena laughs as he continues the assault on Kane. Cena goes for the attitude adjustment at ringside, but Kane slides out and escapes through the crowd because he dumped him over the barricade and escaped. And one of the barricade on the other side just barely even touched it, and it just dropped. Okay, and he wasn't too far from the exit anyways. John Laurinaitis walks backstage and gets laughed at by Kelly and Alicia Fox as they go to commercial. Back from the break, and out comes John Laurinaitis. He wants to say a few things before Triple H comes out to give him his review. Laurinaitis knows what he's done on Raw and knows each fan has appreciated it. He says the facts are in the numbers. Raw ratings have been up versus a year ago. He says that's a fact. Laurinaitis says he was required to do a self-assessment test by WWE and gave himself a lot of 5-star ratings. Triple H music hits, interrupts, and out comes the game to a nice reaction from the crowd. Well, this whole segment started right at 10:01, and it ended about 17, 18 minutes past 10 o'clock hour. Yep. Okay, and back from the break. Okay, I already read that. Triple H says, forget everything else. This is pretty simple. He's been watching Laurinaitis for a long time. At first, he thought Laurinaitis might do a good job because he's spineless and gutless and not very swift. Triple H says he was wrong. Laurinaitis is no different than anyone else. Actually, he's worse than anyone else. Triple H says Laurinaitis tried to use his job to make himself a star. Something he couldn't do when he was an active competitor many years ago. With the dynamic dudes, and then he went to Japan. Laurinaitis says Triple H is wrong. He's done a lot of good things for Raw, just ask the fans. Well, Triple H goes on and he says when he and Vince McMahon let personal decisions get in the way of the job, they had to be replaced. He says Laurinaitis has done the exact same thing. Laurinaitis pleaded with him and says he will do anything to keep his job. Triple H says that's a broad statement. Triple H wants Laurinaitis to apologize to the fans for letting personal decisions cloud his judgment, and he does. But he gives no emphasis on any of that, no feeling at all. So the fans boo him the whole time, and Triple H asks them what they think. Was it good enough? And everybody says, hell no. Triple H says that's not going to work. Triple H brings up putting Laurinaitis in a gauntlet match. He's still looking for something Laurinaitis can do to redeem himself. Triple H brings up Vince McMahon's Kiss My Ass Club. Laurinaitis says he doesn't have to prove his loyalty. He loosens his tie and applies some lip balm. Triple H bends over on the near the ring ropes and then stops. But he didn't drop his pants or anything. Triple H starts laughing and it was just anything silly. He came here for one reason, to do what needs to be done. Triple H says the board of directors sees that he has put his personal problems behind him and have made it clear that he can come back to run Raw whenever he feels like it. Well, the crowd popped at this point. Triple H goes to wish Laurinaitis the best in his future endeavors as the lights go out and the bell tolls. Dong! The return of the Undertaker, who says nothing just like Jericho does. Undertaker appears on the stage through the smoke and what have you that was coming up from the fog machines, and just stared down at Triple H in the ring. Taker slowly walked to the ring. Triple H kept his eyes locked on the dead man as he entered the ring, and the crowd cheered. Taker walks around Triple H and then kept his eyes locked on each other. Taker's music stops and he comes face to face with Triple H. They don't say anything. The crowd chants Taker's name. Taker looks up at the WrestleMania sign. Well, he started to raise his hand and point just like he's done several years ago. And from WrestleMania 28 sign and then back at Triple H. Taker cuts his own throat. And as the crowd pops, the stare down continues until Taker looked back at the sign, then back at Triple H. Triple H pats Taker on the back, or actually it was on the shoulder, and walks out of the ring. The crowd boos as Triple H walked up the ramp and to the back. Well, he just stopped at on the ramp, at the top of the rampway, never turned around. and went gracingly on the way back to the back. Well, Taker looked back to the WrestleMania sign as Triple H stopped on the stage and kept walking. Taker's music hits again as Raw goes off the air. And that ends my results from Raw and your superstars. Thanks, and God bless everybody, and stay tuned for tomorrow night's SmackDown, NXT, and Superstars results as well.